As I've already said, he worked extensively on art after the Lebanese civil wars. Now, Walid, in his book...
Sorry, do you mind if we take a couple of chairs?
You can take these chairs.
Okay, thank you.
So Walid, in his last book called The Ruin to Come, published, I think, around 2016 with Moto Books. So if you look at the back of the book, the back cover of the book, Walid says that actually he's concerned with the time after the Civil War, which is a time that he coins the time of a protracted civil war. Okay? What does it mean? It means that for someone like Walid Sadek, the end of the war, which was announced, as far as I remember, in 1992, around that time, in the 90s, early 90s, for Walid, the war didn't end. So it's a kind of protracted civil war. Means there's a kind of extension in time of the logics that were pertaining inside the war.
Sorry.
You want a chair?
Yes.
Take a chair. So, for him, the war didn't end, and actually there's a kind of continuation of the war in these days of peace. And we can argue, I don't know if you heard that during the revolution, at the beginning of the revolution here, the new revolution, they said the war ended on the 17th of... okay, so the war ended with the revolution, which is a plausible thesis that can be argued for or defended. So you see, the war didn't stop. So it started around 75, and it continued maybe until 2019, even though it was announced over in 1992. So the time that Walid is dealing with is this time of peace. It looks like a time of peace, but actually it's a prolongation of the war. Now, Walid describes this time like that. He says in his text, The Ruin to Come, he says, protracted civil war is a temporality particularly nefarious and iniquitous, governed and maintained by political sectarian factions, structurally capable through the deployment of intermittent boots of violence, of renewing the necessary conditions for their longevous dominance. So what is he saying here? What he's saying is that actually we are living in a situation where the sectarian warlords that you know, Birri'un, Nasrallah, Jumbla, Jaja, etc., Jmails, etc., these sectarian lords, warlords, most of them, are actually able to continue governing and making money and being in power in this atmosphere where they're able to unleash boots of violences here and there, whatever they want. And this is the place or the time in which we live. We don't live really in a time of peace. We live in a time which is governed by this coterie, as he sometimes calls it, a kind of clique of oligarchs that are able to maintain their power. Crucially, this protracted temporality, indeed, protracted now, continues to be accompanied by a wishful discourse. So the reign of the warlord is coupled with a wishful discourse on the necessary future release from the binds of sectarianism. So what he's saying here, he's saying that this type of governance by the sectarian lords is actually coupled with the wishful discourse that one day we will get rid of sectarianism and we will have a democratic state and maybe democracy, elections, whatever, the Lebanese rocket society to send a man to the moon and stuff like that, maybe will be like a real the powerful democracy. Do you see what Walid is saying is this? You have this kind of sectarian discourse. You have a sectarian discourse, and this sectarian kind of ruling is coupled with the nice people discourse, which is sectarianism is bad, we need to get rid of it, we need to get over it. Now, Walid, he's against both. This is what makes his position a bit complicated. Both tendencies. He says to be with the warlords is bad, and to just dream of a future Lebanon is also bad. Now, why both tendencies are wrong for him, this is what we'll see in details, because for him, the wishful discourse, this discourse which is projected towards the future, is actually what makes us oblivious, what makes us not attentive to what is really happening here. To live all the time in this kind of justice to come, one day we will be a democracy all the time, being obsessed with this idea. For Walid, you stop living in the present. You have a kind of, I don't know how to call it, kind of amnesia that comes from the future this time, because you're so obsessed with the future that you are like, you don't see where you are living anymore. And for him, this is what allows, among other reasons, the perpetuation of the reign of the sectarian warlords, because you're not anymore attentive to the here and the now.
Because they're not acting.
Huh?
Because they're not acting. They're only dreaming.
The problem is not they could be acting, but they're not acting on what is really here.
They're ignoring what's happening.
They're ignoring, in a way, what is really here, what's happening and what happened. And they're completely obsessed with these, images of democracies that we usually bring from somewhere else. We usually bring them from France or the United States. And you're really obsessed with this kind of, the worries that are carried. I'm not saying that these worries are bad intrinsically. I'm just saying that they put a kind of veil between you and your immediate presence. If the whole day you're interested in saving the animals and the beka, which is fine, or ecological concerns, if you are a French guy, you would be really concerned with ecology, because there it's one of the most burning issues. There it's very important to conceive animal rights, gender rights, all kinds of rights for immigrants, the dialogues of communities, of communities, immigrants, and the like. If you are into these kinds of perspectives politically in Lebanon, which are fine as perspectives, you don't see the burning issues which are here. Actually, you don't see that here there's a present which is the present of a protracted civil war. This is all what he's saying. He's saying, okay, your democracy will come maybe one day, but if you are worried with it, you are not seeing what's happening in here. If you want, this is the basic posture. So what do you do when you are living in a protracted civil war? This is a question. On the back cover of the book, again, Walid says his work is to labor. He needs to labor, he needs to work, and he needs to work in 4 directions. He needs to do a labor of the ruin to come. He needs to make a labor of the missing, a labor of mourning in the presence of the corpse, and a labor of seeing by way of death. So the labor of mourning, the labor of the missing, the labor of seeing, and the labor of the ruin to come. So you have to do work. to be here, to access the present of Lebanon here, and to be able to see it as a prolonged civil war, you have to do a labor. Actually, you have to do a fourfold labor, which are the labor of mourning, missing, seeing, etc. So actually, what are these labors? Briefly said, the labor of mourning that we'll see today in detail is a labor where you teach yourself how to remain with the traces of violence. We'll see it in detail today, but just to give you an idea, when you have a destroyed city, people have a tendency to move on, like what happened with Solidaire. You build it anew and you move on. Or we have a tendency to move backwards, like go look for who did that, who killed this, and to find, criminals and responsibles and the like. So you have these two tendencies, a tendency towards the past and a tendency towards the future. And what Walid says, as we'll see in detail, you don't really remain with the traces of violence themselves. This is the first one.
So you should move on?
Not yet. I'll do this in detail. So you have these two tendencies. Either you move on, or you remain in the past, which if you want future Hezbollah, future says, let's move on and forget it. Hezbollah says, no, we'll never forget until we destroy the origin of all this, which is Israel. I have these two basic tendencies, past, future. And what Walid is saying is, no, you have to find a way to remain in the present, because the traces of violence, as traces of violence, cannot be reduced neither to their past nor to their possible future. We will do this in detail today. The second labor, which is called the labor of the missing, is that when someone disappears, also you can forget and move on, or you can remain melancholically attached to the missing. And what Walid says is, no, the labor of the missing is where you start feeling the silence and the absence of the missing without reducing the silence to the stories of the missed, nor to the coming back of the missed. I hope you're getting what he's saying. So I repeat. Yeah. You see, let's suppose, please, can you move one chair? I will help you not talk. So what I'm saying is this. Someone goes missing. We'll do that tomorrow. Someone goes missing. Your uncle, your father, or someone is kidnapped, like what this used to happen in the war. Immediately we have two tendencies. Either we want him back, and you resume as if nothing happened. We're very happy that you're back and safe, etc., and you move on. Or if he's not back, you only obsess about what happened to him, where is he, etc., etc., and you start to reconstruct the story of his missing. What Walid is saying is there's something else. There's a third way, which is difficult to grasp because we are usually in these two. He's saying, no, you see, when someone disappears, the silence, the absence that he leaves behind him is something that you need to start acknowledging and living with. So this is what he calls the labor of the missing. And you have two other labors, the labors of seeing. How do you see a ruin? How do you perceive an absence? How do you perceive a missing? And you have the labor of the ruin to come that we'll develop later. So I hope the program is clear. Actually, he announces like that. Interestingly, this program he announced it already in 2010 in an interview with Jaco, his friend. There's an interview, and he says clearly, I work on these four labors. So, to understand the labor of mourning is when someone dies, and you do your mourning, aza, you try to remember and forget the one you love who died. This is mourning, in short. So to go into the labor of mourning, I will go back to 1995 to the exhibitions that happened at the Sanaya Garden. Okay, 1995, which which is practically the real end of the Civil War. It was announced in 1992, and then stuff happened. 1995, the reconstruction stuff began. Hariri was, boosting. He was doing well with his reconstruction project. In the meantime, he, of course, destroyed what was left from the city center. You know, the Hariri, he's the bigger cause of destruction in the downtown. It's not the Civil War. He's the real, he's the one who destroyed it, literally.
There are videos of it.
You have videos? Good. I'll see you. You send me the videos. Okay. So wherever you have something, send me emails. Okay. So really, Hariri was beginning his solidaire thing. And Christine Tommy and Ashkal Alwan, which is one of the major actors in this post-war art scene. Really, I think Christine Tommy, she's really the one, as an artistic organization, that really, in quote, discovered or carried or gave space to these artists that became known as the post-war artists in Lebanon. So Ashkal Alwan organized one of its first public events. And this public event consisted in a public exhibition in the Sanaya Garden. You know Sanaya. It's here, next to Clemenceau, Sanaya. And she really thought with the organizers that the war is over and it's time now to give space for artists, thinkers, whoever wants to invest in this public space in a kind of democratic revival of the state and resuming of life after war. This, if you want the discourse that you're all invited as artists, citizens, etc., those who outlived the war to come to Sanaya and exhibit wherever you want to exhibit. So, in his text, please can you move to? Yeah, move there, this way. I have a broken chain. So, in this exhibition that Sadek talks about in A Place at Last, these artists were invited to exhibit their works. Okay. Now, of course, many artists just exhibited work, like painting, sculpture. You know, you do your work like, okay, I'm a young artist. Usually they were young, most of them. I want to impress the people. You know, you do your thing. Incredible sculpture, big paintings, whatever you want. You do your thing. Or you think you are doing experimental art, so you do weird things in the garden because you don't believe in sculpture nor in painting anymore, and you do your thing. And you had a lot of artists who did that. You had a lot of artists who really almost didn't reflect on the temporality, the time in which they are, where you have a war stopping, the war is over, and we are beginning a new phase, apparently. So you have this first group. The first group, almost, Walid doesn't talk about that. First group is almost like those who are almost oblivious even of the context in which they are, and they only think about doing their art as if nothing happened, literally, which is fine, but he doesn't speak about them. I would say that they are fully in representation. This is what I would say, meaning for them, art is just about expressing yourself, doing your thing. It could be sculpture, painting, experimental, video, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you do your thing. Now, you have another line which is very close to this one, but a bit different, which are people like Ahwaji. And what Ahwaji did is that he tried to frame plants inside the Sanaya garden. It's a bit different. It's a bit different, but it's very close. So Ahwaji really tried to frame paintings in the Sanaya garden. It's working, it's not working. So anyway, I'll describe the things. Yeah, no, okay, so Ahwaji, what he did is that he framed plants inside the garden. Now, how did he frame these plants? he brought like sticks of white wood, and he really tried to make geometric forms enclosing the stuff that he's framing. Okay. And here, Walid says, you see, what Awaji is trying to do, he's trying to elevate the objects which are there in the garden, a tree, a bench, a stone, whatever, and he's trying to give them this kind of representation that encloses them into these geometric forms. So you have a geometric form that encloses a tree, that would be the representation of the tree it encloses, a kind of rectangle that encloses a bench, which would be the idealized, stylized bench or abstracted bench, etc., etc. And these are what Walid considers are representations. Why are they representations? Because you have this material thing with its accident, a tree, and you really try to rarefy it, abstract the accidents, and give it a beautiful kind of representation. So, anyway, he's not recognizing my key, so I describe his work, okay? So, okay, so what Awaji did, you have the pictures on the box, so you see them later. What Awaji did is that he really framed these trees with geometrical lines. Fine. Now, Walid considers that this is what we call a representation. Now, what is a representation for, in general, in the arts? A representation is always a visual that is going to try to express an idea. If you want, this is the definition of representation. Representation always operates between two different realms, which are the realm of what you understand and the realm of what you see, and never between similar realms like what you see and what you see, even though we have a tendency to understand representation as I see is a bottle, I make an image of it, so representation. No, it's not like that at all. You have to have a difference in nature. And usually when we do it with the bottle, it's because we consider that this is the real bottle and this is an image which is not real. So you have this kind of clash between the dimensions. And it's not an image about an image. A representation is always between two different realms, between usually what you understand and what you see. Yeah?
For example, a blue rectangle can be a representation of a bottle.
It can be if you consider that the blue rectangle is an image and the bottle is a reality and the image is not a reality.
An image, for example, painting.
Painting is an image, it's not the real, and this is the real. This could be the representation of that.
But it was real.
I'm explaining this, okay? So what is a representation? A representation in general is when you have this kind of disjunction between the real and the image of the real. And usually in a classical image, in a classical system, the real is accessed by what you understand. So you can, if you remember last time, modernity, you can understand the reality of someone sitting on a boat as a physical dynamism. You know, the guy is sitting there, you have biological movements, you have the movement of the boat, etc. And if this is how you understand the real, you can make an image of what you understand. You know, you start doing like Beauclerk does, you codify the different dynamism and you compose your painting. This is what you call a representation. So representations are most of the time about what you understand, which is supposed to be the ground, which is beneath what you see. And the representation is going to do this kind of work of bringing to the visual what you understood as lying beneath what you see. Okay. So Walid considers that the work of Ahwaji is representational because what he's trying to do, he's trying to give an idealized visual about the material which is there. So I explain this differently. If you take another work by Marwan Rishmawi called Beirut Caoutchouc, I don't know if you know this work. It's a huge map. It's a huge map where you see Beirut, really big, as big as this room almost. And it's a representation of Beirut. Why? Because in this map, you see all the roads, the buildings, the relations. And for Walid, this is a way to understand the spatial dimension of Beirut. Fine. Now, the problem here is what? The problem is that these representations, for Walid, they try to tell us that it is possible to conceive clearly what Lebanon is. What does it mean? It means that if you want to express Beirut, all what you need to do is understand what Beirut is, let's say spatially. We say Beirut is this topography, and you put your buildings, your street, and you produce this nice object, and you say, this is how we understand Lebanon, and this is the image of what we understand. Now, Walid says that it doesn't work like that, because if your project is to produce a perfect representation of Lebanon, a kind of nice representation of Lebanon, something is going to resist this representation, something is going to be reluctant to be represented, and these representational nice images are going to become distorted, dirtied, and they're not going to look like nice immaterial representations. I explain. So I explain it with a normal example. You see, many here dream about having a democracy. What is democracy? It's what you call representational democracy. It's very simple. People are going to represent you because they carry the same values and the same rationality. This is the representational part. You elect a deputy because for you he thinks like you. And you will have this congregation of representatives, and they elect the president, so it's wonderful. You are in this system of representation. Fine. Now, if you take the last elections, not the last ones, the one before on, I don't know if you remember the Jaja when he presented himself to be president. There was a short moment, like 2 weeks, where Jaja proposed himself to be the next president. And, it looks like a democracy. People vote, and they're supposed to be representatives of the people. People meaning the deputies vote. And what happened is that when Jaja was about to get elected, or in the electoral process, in the box, so you had names like, okay, I vote for Jaja, I don't know who Jaja. And then you had, for example, Sham'oun, because he killed Sham'oun. And here you feel that, what the hell is this democracy where in the box of the representational rational state, you have the names of those who were murdered by the guy supposed to become president, okay? And you had also, I think, Karami, and, a number of names supposed to be the victims of the forthcoming president. This is what you call a clash in the representational system. You see, we wish for a nice representational thing, like democracy, elections, and the like, and then there's a bug. There's something that is stained. There's something that is not clean, like the names of those who Jaja killed. Okay. So what Walid is saying is this. He's saying Marwan Rishmawi, who did this beautiful map of Beirut in the aftermath of the war, he did it around 2000. They say 2002, 2004, but whatever. So it's still fresh, you know. And Ahwaji, who tries to like frame the garden with these beautiful abstract forms, which, you know, they're nice like that. He says that Ahwaji, at one point, he can't really frame the trees in a perfect platonic solids. What does it mean? It means that, you know, he wants to make a cube, but then you have a branch coming up like that, so the cube is a bit tweeted. It's a bit, you know, it's not a nice cube. And he wants to frame the bench, but, you know, there's a piece there, and he needs to get to the piece there, so it's not a nice rectangle. So the idea behind that is what? Is that if you want to represent the people, which is the material, you want to uplift it in this kind of representational framework, in a parliament or in a picture or whatever, there's something in this material, which is the Lebanese people after the war, or the Lebanese condition after the war, that's going to be a bit reluctant. It's like a donkey that is not moving on with you, to take the shape of a beautifully represented thing. Yeah?
So that's why it's a good representation, because it's not perfect. There's something...
Yeah, representations are supposed to be as perfect as possible, meaning they really are supposed to show you in an image the content of thought, like the cube, the image of the cube. I understand that the cube should have 6 equal faces. The cube that you see here is a representation of what I understand. Of course, it's never exactly the same. This is a defect which is okay in normal representational democracies. You know, the deputy is never the perfect deputy, but at least the material is represented. If you go to France, in the box, you'll never find the names of the victims that the president killed. It's unimaginable. Maybe Macron is not a wonderful president, but he's not a murderer. I hope you're getting the difference. Okay, so in normal representational democracies, of course, you have problems, issues, but they are still normal issues. This is something. And in sectarian, or in what we have here, democracies, you have things which are weird. And what Walid is saying is that Ahwaji tries to make this abstract, nice art, but it doesn't work because, you know, the garden resists to be enclosed in these perfect shapes. And if you take Marwan Rishmawi's beautiful map, at the end, Walid Sadek says, at the end, this map looks like a mat, like a doormat, because people start walking on it. And after a while in the exhibition, you come, you look at it, it's dirty, you have dirt in it and stuff, and it looks disgusting. And this is what he calls the reluctance of matter. I hope this idea is clear. I want to make a perfect representation of Lebanon, and there are stuff which are stains there. It doesn't work, like dirty stuff, disjointments. If you take Solidaire, the same logic. Take Solidaire, okay, Hariri, you like him, you don't like him, it doesn't matter. His project was to produce this beautiful city center. Okay. He really wanted, out of full good intentions or bad intentions, it doesn't matter. He had this idea, this image, this thought, it's not an image, this kind of project to produce the most beautiful city center in the Arab world. Okay, fine. He did it, you know, he called Zaha Hadid and I don't know, all these star architects, Moreno, you know, big names of architecture from all over the world, and it's not bad, the city center. If you look at it as, you know, you walk, you have flowers, fountains, it's cool, you know, it's not bad. AC everywhere, parkings with indicators, it's cool. The problem is what? If you go now to the city center, even before the revolution, it's stained. Even before the revolution, it's like you walk, you have a barricade, and then a guy comes with an ear, he tells you, what are you doing here? And the shops are really, you feel that you are in a war zone, and this is supposed to be a shopping center. Right? This is what you call the resistance of matter. I want to have a nice, beautiful city center, because Hezbollah hates, or Hariri, you know, if you remember the camps that they did just or around the assassination time, just after the assassination time, etc., the city center starts looking like a war zone. Until today, it looks like a war zone. So these items, like shopping mall with a concrete wall, with barbed wire, this montage is a sign of a reluctance of matter. What is this doing here? Of course, it's doing here because Hariri was oblivious about the materiality and reality of where he is, and for him, it's enough, to bring liberal capitals and to build a nice city center, and that's it. And this is when matter resists. Something comes back from this past which is unresolved. So, what would Walid really think is a good art in the Sanaya Garden project? So for him, the figure which is like the hero of the Sanaya Garden project is called Ziyad Abi Lama. I don't know if you know him. He's a Lebanese artist that is operating since 1995 until today. He had many exhibitions. The last one was in the Barakat Gallery maybe a year ago or something like that. So he's one of these Lebanese artists. And in 1995, what Abi Lama proposed is to the Sanaya project. He said, they're inviting us to come here and make artworks. And me, I'm not even able to speak Arabic when he came in 1995 because of the war, he fled to the United States. So he was an immigrant there. He didn't learn Arabic. So when he came, he has this, broken Arabic, as we say. And he came here, and he knows very well that there was a war, and a very, very, violent war. And he felt that these people organizing the Sanaya thing are just inviting him to play the artist, to sign his name under the work and say, I'm a great creative genius. And for him, he had very issues with that. And Walid praises him for that. He says, at least this guy, Abi Lama, he feels that there's something in this context that is not very normal. And this guy, Abi Lama, is reluctant himself to just resume the post-war as if nothing happened. And his work is about this difficulty to just resume and make a work. So I hope you're getting this. You have artists, as I told you, who are oblivious. Like, they just do their thing, be it sculpture, experimental art, or whatever. And you have this other type of artist who feels that it's difficult to just do work here in the Sanaya Garden because I'm coming here, I don't know how to speak the language, I have all these images in my memory or my mind about Lebanon. The Lebanese war was heavily televised. It's one of the most, maybe one of the first or most wars that were on TV. Lebanon was, in France, it was so much televised that it became a slang thing to say, like in Beirut. It was all over the TV over years and years. So now in France, if you have a mess, you say, it's like Beirut. A bit up till today. So it was really heavy. And he's like really haunted, like inhabited by these images. And he comes here, and the organizers, not all of them, but this is how it felt, as if they're inviting him to just, do your artist thing and resume. So Abi Lama says, I had difficulties. He was reluctant to just move in. And what he proposed is the image of his face with a blemish on it. The Lebanese map. So you have it in the folder. So you have his, like a passport identity photo, and you have the Lebanese map like that on his face. So you have a blemish, as Walid calls it, and you don't really see well his face, and you feel that he's scratching or eliminating his identity, his name, and he just presenting himself as someone who has difficulties assuming an identity, a name, the status of an artist, the status of a civil person, and he has a difficulty in the space, which is the Sanaya Garden. And what he proposes is this kind of blemish. Okay? Now, Now, this blemish is really like integrating the reluctance of matter inside the production of the image itself. So you have here not I produce an image and then accidentally it gets distorted. No, I'm aware that in here any representational act will be distorted, and I do the distortion built in. I show you that my identity is distorted. I am an immigrant, I don't speak Arabic, I don't know where I am, I hunted with these images, and hence my face is blemished, is like raturé. It's under a bar. So let's do it again. And if there is a reluctance of matter, why is this material reluctant? So you are in the aftermath of the war, and you said that there is a difficulty to bring this material, the Lebanese history people, into representation. Something resists. Another example to do it again. One of the other good figures for Walid Sadek is Hassan Dawood. He wrote a novel called Light Makeup for Tonight. And Light Makeup for Tonight is the story of Wadad, which is a Lebanese woman. And she had a car accident. And she went into the coma. And when she woke up, she doesn't remember anything in the coma. And when she woke up, she had a scar on her neck. This is the trace of the violent accident. Now, of course, Wadad knows that she had a car accident, but she doesn't really know what happened during the coma. And she only carries the scar on her neck. What can she do with the scar? She can either go to a plastic surgeon next by and do her thing, and she can resume. She will be no scar, nothing happened, and she resumes her life. This would be like the future movement, Hariri group, etc. Or she can dwell on the trauma of the scar. Why this happened to me? I can't get over it, and this would be towards the past. It remains that in the novel of Hassan Dawood, what this woman does is that she starts wearing her scar, which means that she exhibits her scar for people to look at. And what Walid says is that she disperses the scar in the eyes of those who look at her. And he calls that a perverse beginning. Which means it's a beginning that's going to keep the scar, but it's going to share the scar with the others as a way to relate to the others erotically or not. Doesn't matter. In the book it was a bit erotically, but the main idea is that with the scar you can establish a relation instead of erasing the scar or sitting at home and thinking that, oh my God, I'm scarred, okay, which are the two other options. You can use the scar as a vector or vehicle for a way of sharing with the others. Now, this scar is called an excessive material. Technically speaking, the concept that Walid proposes is that this scar, is called an excessive material or an excessive materiality because we're unable to put on the scar the story of the scar. I explain. It's very simple what he's saying. What he's saying, let's suppose you wake up in the morning, like what used to happen often if you lived the Civil War. At night you're hiding inside, underground, and you hear the bombardments. You wake up in the morning, you go out to see what happened, and you see that the building is half destroyed. Your neighbor received 150, the other one he received a 250. And you say, yeah, you look at the traces of violence. I hope this is clear. So you wake up in the morning, fundamental experience that you find all over the history of the Lebanese war, and you go and you inspect what was destroyed. And you see this destruction, which is usually quite consistent, very, very graphic, very present, standing there. And the whole issue is that you cannot reduce this experience, witnessing your home destroyed or your street destroyed, to the story that comes with it. There's a kind of disjointment. So if they tell you, yeah, it's very simple, it's, I don't know, On or Amal that was bombing, or Israel, or wherever, there's something more. What does it mean there's something more? It means that your experience of that cannot just stick to the story of that. And I insist on this point. Walid is not saying you're traumatized, you don't know what the hell happened, you are in a total blackout. He's not saying that. Other artists will say that. He's not saying that we are so traumatized by the war that we have like a traumatic experience. I explain. What is a trauma theory or a traumatic experience? As you know, in Freud, you watched when you were a baby your parents having sex, and for you this image was so awful that you black out, meaning you don't have anymore any access to what you saw. And you start building compulsive behaviors in order not to see this image or acknowledge it anymore. Is it clear? I can repeat. In a trauma, usually, the defense mechanism, as we call it, the defense mechanism is a repetition, it's a compulsive repetition that allows you not to acknowledge what you have seen or what you suffered. And many Lebanese artists that we will see later, they think that Lebanon is a kind of traumatic experience, and people are like blacked out, they are in a closure, and they don't want to know what happened. The position of Walid is not that at all. Just to distinguish that. Walid is not saying, there's a bombardment, we are so traumatized, and we don't know what happened. No, we know what happened, and we know what happened very well. Actually, you know it so well that you go to the AUB library, you have it, what happened. So knowledge is available, but the problem is that this knowledge doesn't stick on what is the knowledge of. This knowledge doesn't really stick on what it is the knowledge of.
What do you mean by what you just said?
I'm explaining that. So he says it like that. To make it more clear, he says, our index is numbed. Our index is numbed, hence it turns into a thumb that we end up sucking. What does it mean? It means that our index, the indexical, the Israeli bombardment doesn't stick on your building destroyed. They can explain to you, this is Israeli bombardment because of geopolitics, capitalism, whatever you want. Okay, fine. You understand it here, and then when you look at it, it's there. And you have this kind of clash between the information you have and the knowledge you have and the thing which is in front of you. And you cannot really reduce this experience, this frontal experience with this destroyed something, with the name or the story that you end up just holding in your hand, and Walid says it's moist. You hold it in your hand, you look at this, what do you want to do? Okay, I understood that, on because of Jaja, Amal, blah, blah, they destroyed my neighborhood. Okay, I got it. And then you look at your destroyed neighborhood, and there's something still that doesn't make full sense. I hope.
Why it doesn't make sense?
Because the experience of this destruction is an excess to the rationalization of it. There's something more in it. I'll give you another example. There's a guy who was going back home in the Jabal wars, in the mountains wars, and in the mountains war, cadavers were on the street. And while he was going back home, he saw this cadaver, a cadaver, and he went back home. And later, he asked, where is my son, where is my son? And they went looking for him, and actually they brought him the same cadaver. So what he is trying to say is that if you take a cadaver, you look at it, first you don't recognize it, and then you recognize it. In this experience with the unrecognized cadaver, you have something in excess. You see, when your son or father or mother or friend dies, you know that this thing is your friend, but you can't say that he's your friend. You look at the cadaver sitting there, and you say, you have his name, but you can't put his name, you can't really put the name anymore on the cadaver as a cadaver. In this experience where you are in the presence of the corpse, you feel that the corpse is something more. You feel that the corpse is like, I don't know, like an object in excess sitting in the room, and you can't reduce the corpse and the experience with the corpse to the stories of the guys and to, you bury him, you remember him well, and you move on. Okay? So, this notion of lingering in the presence of the corpse, really like staying with the corpse as corpse. And here Walid evokes the story of a cousin who died, and he says, we went to the funerals, and we were sitting there, and you feel that there's an awkward atmosphere. The Christian rituals, the cadaver stays more. As the Islamic rituals, it stays for a bit, but it's buried a bit quicker. But it remains that you have this corpse sitting there. Maybe you remember some relative who died. It's there, and you feel that there's this kind of awkward silence. It's kind of awkward silence, and Walid says it's an awkward silence which is like a thin blanket sitting on us, the awkward silence, and each one of us is going into a kind of soliloquy and a kind of internal monologue while looking at this corpse. And in this presence of the corpse, speech is very, very difficult to initiate and to establish. You can't just sit there and speak about, I was yesterday on the beach, and we did this, and you feel that the presence of the corpse imposes on you a verbal and a linguistic behavior, just by the fact that the corpse is there. And you feel that what you say comes from a very long soliloquy with yourself. You say 2 words, and the guy responds with 1 or 2 words, and there is a conversation, but it's a kind of, Walid calls it a difficult, disrupted conversation, and it's there. So what Walid is saying is that, because for him, when he speaks about the corpse, for him these are paradigmatic experiences in order to understand what we can do with the collective experience that we had with the ruins and the rubble, with the destroyed city, Hamra, downtown, and like this collective experience where we witness destruction. Now, what it says, when you witness destruction, it's like when you are in the presence of the corpse. You have these destroyed neighborhoods, and we're all sitting there, and these neighborhoods are ours. They're not like, it's where you live. So it's like the corpse, it's someone that you know very well. This is why it's not like the trauma theory. It's someone that you know very well. You know the story of this guy, you know the story of this neighborhood, and you know who destroyed it. But this knowledge doesn't prevent or cancels the experience with the corpse. Doesn't cancel it. So you're sitting there, you feel this weight of the corpse, the weight of the corpse. There's a story, I don't know if you know it, it's a king that finds his corpse and he needs to carry it. Walid talks about it, you don't know the story. So a king encounters his corpse. Shireen Abu Sha'ra, you can Google her or find this video. If you find the video, send me an email. And she made an animation with that. This is all part of this post-war Lebanese art. And you see the king really carrying the corpse. And the corpse, he throws riddle on the king. Tells him, what is, I don't know what. And the king tries to guess, and he tries to guess, and he tries to guess. And he can't guess the riddles, of course. And while failing to solve the riddle, he starts feeling the weight of the corpse. And after a while, he shut up, and he goes into a soliloquy, into a kind of introspective monologue. And this is when he is united or really communicating with the corpse. Now, what does this little story says? This little story says that the problem is not solving the riddle. The problem with the Lebanese wars is not who done it, who did what, we want to, because we already know, the riddle is solved. The real riddle that is hidden beneath the riddle speech is that we lived through an experience, which is a collective experience of violence, war, destruction, corpses, real corpses, all kinds of atrocities, and this is a weight that we carry, and it induces a speech which is not like the normal speech of just, they did this, they did that, this is the story, let's move on. It's another form of speech that requires silence, soliloquy, a disrupted form of communication, 2 words here, 1 word there, silence, etc. This is how you relate to that course. So what is excessive materiality? Sometimes Walid calls it excessive presence. So if you want to formalize that, you see an excessive presence. The most easy example is the one who went into a coma. That you have a linear time, Lebanon, whatever, golden age, banking, cool, you ski and you go ski nautique, Okay, Lebanon, normal time, sequential time. And then you have a rupture, like the woman has a normal life and then accident. And then you wake up and you have the traces, and you have a story that is not reducible to the traces and vice versa. This is how you produce excessive materiality. Excessive materiality is when you have a familiar object, your home, but it's destroyed. Your neighborhood, nothing left of it.
The scar.
Huh?
The scar.
The scar, and it's just there. You wake up, it's there. And you feel that this is a presence on you, it's you and it's on you, and whatever you say, it's there, and it's like a stain. So you need an interruption in time of that stains or disrupts or destroys or disfigures a familiar object, where you are left with the story, the name, or the narrative of this object, but it doesn't fit anymore on the object. This is an excessive presence. I give you other examples of excessive presences. Your uncle was kidnapped for 20 years, and these are real stories. And one day he rings on the bell and he's here. It's your uncle, but it's not really your uncle anymore. It's like you feel that it's him, but he's like weirdly present. He's here, but you can't just reduce him to what he was. Nor to a new guy. He's this kind of excessive presence. Now, this excessive materiality has a modus operandi. I'm telling you this because if you take a Western concept of materiality in the arts, materiality in the art in the West, especially in the modernist systems, is not conceived only as excessive, gravitational, heavy, weighty, detached from its names and stuff like that. It's conceived as matter movement or matter movement force. If you take Newton or Einstein, for Einstein, matter is light. For Newton, matter is movement force. You know these things, you know that matter is a kind of force, or it's light, doesn't matter. And you do your art on this kind of conception of matter as movement, if you want the classical system. What does it mean? It means that for you, really, matter is what moves. And the different ways of moving will give you the different relations and actualization of matter. You know these things. If the boson is moving this way, you get carbon. If it's moving that way, you get, azote or oxygen. You know, these things like actually the shape of the thing is the vibration of the atom. You know. If the light is vibrating too fast, it's infrared. If it's vibrating too slow, it's ultraviolet, and etc. So a kind of classical modernist conception of matter really sees in matter a form of movement. If you take someone like Vertov, I don't know if you know Vertov, the Russian movie maker. Really, Vertov conceived matter as movement, and for him, perception happens by putting different images together, and he makes a movie about Russia where you have an image in a factory, an image on the beach, an image in the mountain, and you make this kind of accelerated montage where you start seeing the total movement of Russia, and this is an image of Russia. I hope it's clear, the example, for those who, you take images and you put them together, you have your material represent. Huh? As you start seeing one after the other, and you feel that you're seeing all of Russia. What I'm trying to tell you, Vertov is really a materialist. He considers that he's providing with us with the material image of Russia. What I'm trying to say is that this you cannot do it in Lebanon. Why you can, really imagine a post-war Lebanese artist going filming in the mountains, then jumping on the seas, then filming people in the factory, in the sports club, in here and there, and then doing a montage like that where you see the Lebanese people working, dancing, singing, and doing whatever they do. Why doesn't it fit? This is the aesthetic. Why it doesn't work? You can't do it. You feel that it would be too, in quote, communist or democratic. Yeah, communism can do these images because in communism you believe that there's a material ground for society, which is human interaction, economics, etc., and that these societies, which are like in the days of Vertov, the communist societies are all intertwined together like a material continuum, in the same way as this bottle affects this, I affect the guy sitting in Baalbek, and I affect the guy sitting in Trablus, etc. And this is a communist conception of things. Is this clear? If you do your basic Marx, you know that we are all intertwined economically, politically, culturally, etc., etc., and hence we affect each other in the same way as an atom here, when vibrating, affects an atom there when vibrating. This is what you call materialism, Western communist style. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is that an artist, because at the end of the day, Walid is an artist, we shouldn't forget that, and he's not only an artist, he made, as far as I know, he made a sculpture. He's an artist that deals with sculpted images, which has a kind of bluntly material component. What I'm trying to tell you is that what Walid is doing, he's generating a material. He's trying to explain to us that the material reality here is not like everything interacts with everything, like in the Western communist or liberal view, but rather that matter here is something that weighs, is something which is heavily present, is something that sucks you in, is something that you carry on your back, is something that has a unidirectional point of absorption. See, it's a different concept of materiality, at least when it comes to the aesthetical prerogatives. Now, what does it mean? It means that when you're sitting there looking at the corpse, you see that you are sucked into it. When you see all this rubble and the stories in Lebanon which are unfinished, your cousin is still disappeared, the husband of your neighbor died, this guy is actually the guy that used to bomb you, that guy is this, that. You feel that it's very heavy as a condition. When you have such a materiality, the plastic works as such cannot take the lightness of, let's say, a Vertov movie, of a constructivist Russian kind of movie. It can't. You feel it doesn't fit. If I make you this joyful Lebanese singing together, it doesn't fit. You tell me, yeah, but where is all these stories that weighs on us? And if I do this movie of people singing together, like a Vertovian kind of movie, you'll feel that matter will be reluctant. I mean, something will be stained in this movie. It will not work very well. Okay. Now, to conclude, what is Sadek Hans advocating for? Is he advocating, I hope, why it's a labor. It's very difficult to access what I'm talking to you about. Why it's very difficult? Why Walid needs to write and think and read and go into all this mess? Because I think, not him, or through him, that in here we have imported categories. What is matter? Matter movement, of course. What is politics? Marx. What is democracy? France. What is cinema? James Dean. It's like, and even we speak like that, all of us, including me, like salut, ça va, etc. Okay, so you have this kind of viruses, grids, which filter you from what is here. And the work, and this is why it's a work, it's not reluctance, it's really like you try to go this way and something is pushing you the other way. I would like to go democratically, and just forget about it, but something resists. The material conditions are not moving forward. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when you have all these imported grids, like Kant, Marx, democracy, Rawls, Deleuze, all of them together, I'll put Deleuze in bracket because he's plastic. But anyway, all of them together, you feel that you just can't apply it as is. If you apply it as is, you'll have a kind of resistance. And actually, this is the problem. The problem is that you need now to generate a concept that is going to be able to describe in the most specific and accurate way what you are really experiencing. Because if you bring a concept from even very nice people like Marx, Deleuze, or whatever, or Foucault here, well, you will miss your lived experience. So this is why in the text of Walid, if you read In the Presence of the Corpse, you have it in the reading, he brings Freud. So can really Freud teach us about what we are living here in terms of mourning and the presence of the corpse, in terms of how do we deal with all these dead people, destroyed buildings, etc. Can the Freudian concept of mourning be useful here? And really here, Walid makes a kind of very accurate comparison between what Freud is saying and what he's saying. And what Freud is saying, for example, when it comes to mourning, what is he saying? He's saying that actually if you remain attached to the dead person, the dead lover or whatever, you become melancholic, depressed, and this is bad, so you have to move on. What practically Freud says, he says, the remaining with the dead is something bad because it makes you melancholic, etc. And you have to move on. You have to substitute your dead one with another living one, and this is how you move on. Now, what he says, okay, this might be fine for a psychological condition, etc. Okay, you shouldn't drown yourself into melancholy and sadness, but this concept of mourning doesn't allow us to build a sociability, and not anymore a personal issue, among each other when it comes to a collective situation of destruction and death and witnessing corpses and the like. So you see here there's a difference. If you take Freud, what Freud says, melancholy is bad, he has two opposites. Melancholy, you have to forget and move on, substitute. And for him, the only ways for him, Freud.
So it's the same concept of
what Freud says you have either you drown yourself in melancholy, this is the past, you don't forget your lover, and you close the room and you stay in, which would be like Wadad saying, oh my God, I became ugly, it's awful, I lost my beauty, and I stay at home, and you drown yourself into this melancholic past. Or, to avoid that, they say you have to substitute and move on to the future. Freud would tell Wadad, go to a plastic surgeon, make yourself beautiful and move on. Or if your husband is dead, 40 days, 1 year if you want, you cry and you mourn, and then mourning means you stop, you find a new husband, you move on. So these are the alternatives, if you want, in a democratic or Western, I don't know what you want to call it, or let's call it in places where you don't have violence each 2 weeks or each 2 months. Kind of spaces where democracy is operational since 100 years or so, which is a state of normalcy. What Walid is saying is that you don't have only these two options. Either you drown yourself in melancholia, or you substitute and you move on. There's a third way, which is not the synthesis of both, which is to stay not with the dead, but with the corpse.
Showing the scar.
Showing the scar, staying with the dead body, not with the dead person. So I really insist on that because it's very delicate what he's saying. You see, he's saying if you take the militias, they celebrate the past of the dead persons. They say, this guy, he's a hero because he died on the front, or he died fighting Israel, or he died fighting the Muslims or the Christians or whatever. He's a hero. And you inhumane, you bury him and he becomes a hero. You know these pictures, like martyrs. So today you see it in Dahi, you have martyrs, not only in Dahi, you have really like a cult of, we will not forget our dead, they are heroes, and you really like raise them to the state of martyrs, and you stay in that temporality of, we will take vengeance in the future. The other school, which is Hariri kind of people, is let's forget the past, let's forgive and forget, amnesty, this whole kind of thing. Let's do the truth and amnesia. The laws on the thing. Like, we'll forgive everyone. You killed your neighbors, it's okay, let's forgive. You exploded this guy, the Karami guy, it's okay, let's forget about it. Because now it's a new page, like, let's turn the page. And let's move forward. This is mourning. Mourning is really that. Like, don't drown yourself. What Walid is saying, neither nor, he's saying, but how neither nor? You remain with the corpse, not as a nameable corpse, because what's important is the corpse is not his name. You see, when you have the dead son sitting on the table, or your dead friend sitting on the table, there is an important parameter, which is the dead body. And the presence of the dead body really puts you in an awkward mood, an awkward experience. And this experience, as such, with its awkwardness, difficulties, silences, needs to be stretched towards the future. Stretched. It needs to take space. Which is very different from let's forgive and forget, and very different from he died, he's our son, let's make him a hero and take vengeance. So what Walid is saying, like any artist, really I think this is where you see how art can be political in the most interesting or palpable way. Not like I take pictures of I don't know who shooting, I don't know what. Here you see that the art can be political because it opens a dimension of experience. You need an artist to be sensitive so much to what he experiences and what he sees and how he speaks in the most experiential way while sitting in a congregation or in a wake in front of a corpse. And what he's saying is that this fundamental experience, which is what we feel when we see a destroyed building, which is our home, or when we see a dead body, a corpse, which is our dad or brother or whatever, this experience is actually what is really common among us. Actually, what is really common among us is not, the dreams of the future or liberalism or Marxism or whatever. What is really common today among us, those that he calls the overlivers or those who survived the war, is that we all went through these experiences, and it's this experience that could be the common that will build a community of the overlivers that can become a society, which is a real physical society because they have these binds, they have this common physical experience among them. And this is what I call when aesthetics really is political. I hope now you understand. It's not because in my painting I draw Hariri or whatever, or I draw the poor worker, or, like this lame political art, like you take pictures of militiamen, or, this is not the issue. The issue is how the aesthetical itself can unfold a dimension of a communal experience that can initiate a way of speaking, in this case is soliloquy, and as you see later, a way of seeing, and maybe later conceptualization for a political project which should be more, that will deal with would be more, that will go and give shape to this experience. Is this clear? Okay, so you have in the box two texts so far, which are a place at last and in the presence of the course. In here, all what I do is I summarize. So what you heard today is enacted version of the text. So now you can read the text easily, I guess. Of course, there's more in the text. You are only responsible of what I say in the room, so you can relax. If you find more stuff, it's okay. And anyways, there aren't any exams, it's papers. And I will send you the notes tonight or tomorrow. If I don't send them, please remind me, but I will send them. Where you have written the summaries of what I say. So the text is not edited. It's not a beautiful text. Read the text of Sadek. They are really beautiful and nice to read, especially now that you know more or less about what they speak. So now you can read them really easily. He writes beautifully, really very nice, and a clear language with no jargon and stuff like that. So I advise you to do that. So that's it for today.